Hey, John, good to see you.
Nice to see you too, brother.
Come on in, let's get started on
Awesome.
this. After you. Hey, John, have a seat. So glad you made it in
Thanks,
today.
man. Glad to be here.
Can't wait to hear what all's going on with you. We're sitting here today with John Walter Bress. And John has just fought a lot of demons in his life. And this part of the course is about the troubles that someone can run into if they're dealing with drugs and alcohol. And I met John, fortunately, because he came to do a driving test with me. And so obviously he didn't have a license, which you'll later find out happened because of drugs and alcohol. Let's start with, where were you before you came to see me?
Well, before I came to see you, I was living in a sober living treatment facility. I had gone through the first 3 phases of their program, which was extremely strenuous and had their own difficulties in each phase. And
elaborate on that.
well, the first phase of the program, it was a military-based program, so military 12-step based, and each phase is 3 months long. And so the first phase, I had to memorize certain biblical principles and meet different physical requirements, as well as requirements that involve the 12 steps of recovery. And I don't like to work out personally, so doing the physical training and things like that was definitely not my cup of tea, but it did teach me discipline that I needed at the time. In phase 2, I'm allowed to have visitors, my family.
Wow.
So during the first phase, you have no phone, no contact with the outside for 3 months, and you have to meet their criteria before you can phase up. And if you don't have that, then you stay in phase 1. And phase 2, I was able to see my family.
Phase 1 took you how long?
It took me 3 months, so that's cool. I didn't have to stay in there longer.
Yeah, because you told me that normally it's a 9-month program, so
Yes.
it makes sense. 3 months, 3 months, 3 months, you're out.
Yeah.
3 steps. And so first one, you're flying high, you do it in 3 months. So then you go to stage 2.
Yes. So in stage 2, I'm able to kind of see my family, have a little bit more freedom, have more requirements in regards to the 12-step program, just different than phase 1. To do, you're able to go on passes to be able to visit relatives. So I think if I recollect correctly, it was like you do a 24-hour pass first, and then if you do good on that, you come back, you get drug tested, then you can do, I think, a 36-hour is their max. And I think it's like twice a month is the max that you can do it. And that's during phase 2, so you kind of are able to have contact with your loved ones in the outside world and lead the program.
You were probably in there with some people who didn't have people around them that would even want them to come visit them.
100%. There were a lot of people there, a lot of men that were homeless and just checked into the program and had literally no living relatives. And
Or
then
support.
Yes.
No one. A friend,
None.
relative, zero. A former employer, nothing. Zero.
None. And there are some people there that have family, but that have kind of, I don't want to use the word disowned, but have taken a step back in hopes that they would find a better path, and they were still a step back,
And this is all because of drug and alcohol use.
Yeah. Yes.
And I mean, you just think, I think when people start down that path, they're like, oh, I'm just doing it, it's harmless, da da da. And then these people end up losing everything. Not only all their money, possessions. You're not there with all your possessions.
Yeah, no.
And then for some of them, they've lost their relatives, their support, the people that love them have said, I can't take it anymore.
Yeah, it's a very heartbreaking thing. Drug addiction and alcohol abuse is not something small. I mean, whenever I went into the program, I had nothing. I was in a sleeping bag in a parking lot, and my family wouldn't, and it was out of love, but wouldn't communicate with me unless I called and wanted to go right to a rehab. They were done, and I needed that.
Yeah.
At the time, I couldn't see that, but now I do, and I have a relationship with them today.
And unfortunately, that's what it takes.
Yeah.
When you're an addict, that's what it takes, is finally someone saying, because the thing with street drugs or alcohol is there's no one monitoring you. And it's really as available as you make it to yourself. You run out, you just go get more.
Yeah.
It's no big deal. So your ability to just run loose with these addictive chemicals, whether it's alcohol or drugs, it's endless. And so someone has to create a boundary.
Yes.
And then we can start the steps towards turning it around.
Yes. I used to think freedom was found in I do whatever I want to do, no one tells me what to do. But paradoxically, it's found in instruction. You know, the more instruction and guidance and counsel I have in my life today, by choice, I mean, I'm a grown-up, you know, by choice, the more freedom and liberation that I have. And so
I say for every ounce of freedom you are given, there's an equal amount of responsibility that
Yes.
you get. And it can be a lot if you can handle the responsibility.
yes.
And you know, in this class, you know, we're talking about parents or somehow they give their child this car, which to me is the ticket to ride. I mean, theoretically, once they get a license, they could drive from here to North Dakota.
Yeah.
I mean, just one day, just take off. That's an immense amount of freedom. But the car carries an equal amount of responsibility. You've got to carry the insurance. You've got to make sure it's maintained and that the tires are in good shape and, you know, that your headlights work and your windshield wipers work. So it's a big responsibility, plus the possible injury that you can create in our society. So anyway, you move on to 3.
Yes, I move on to 3. In phase 3, that's whenever you really become acclimated with society. I mean, in regards to finding full-time employment, trying to get your driver's license, your social, if you don't have that, a valid ID, and then they help you find employment and to see if you qualify to be employed at certain places. A lot of men there, including myself, have a record, so that can pop up and be difficult. But you go to phase 3 and
How many felonies would you say are on your record?
I have 1 felony, but I have multiple misdemeanors. I have a plethora of misdemeanors.
Now, will that felony ever fall off?
So I'm grateful that mine has fallen off. But
What a blessing.
exactly, it's a big time blessing that it fell off, you know, and it's only by the grace of God that I don't have multiple.
Yeah, and sometimes those job applications, they're really unfair because they say things like, have you ever been convicted of a felony? You know, and that stops people in their tracks. Fortunately, I had a friend of mine, he had fallen in that boat when he was probably about 24, 25. It was his first job, and he sort of got hooked into this money laundering, car title manipulation. Young man didn't really know what he was doing. Next thing you know, he's busted and has a felony on his record, and costing tens of thousands of dollars. And fortunately, some other doors have opened for him, but it took probably 20 years for that limit of it being a felony in his mind to go away and challenge the idea of, oh, I could get a job that requires no felonies. And sure enough, I was fortunate and helped him accomplish that. And now he's got a pretty good job because of it. But when you get that felony on your record, I think as a human being, you carry it much longer and much real than maybe even the state or the paperwork says.
Yeah, no, that is 100% true. There's things about my past that definitely carry regret with them, you know, and the misdemeanors, if you have a theft charge as a misdemeanor, man, potential employers look at that theft charge and it might as well be a felony, you know, because that is a big charge that speaks volumes to a person's character, you know. And there's that, and then if you have DUI charges or charges regarding driving, you're going to have extreme difficulty trying to obtain a driver's license, you know. Not anything easy, and I don't think that it should be, but the consequences are difficult.
And there are, when it comes to driving and you hurt or injure someone while intoxicated, that's a felony.
Yeah.
It's not a misdemeanor, it's a felony. And so, you know, just not on the town. You did the wrong thing, drank a little too much, thought you could drive better than you could. You hit someone, injured them. I mean, it could be as little as a broken bone. It could be a broken pinky, and you've got a felony on your record. And it wasn't anything you intended to do, but that's drugs and alcohol. They're a very powerful thing that I think is very misleading to you when you're on them.
Yes, no, I agree completely with that. And so I was consistent in phase 3 of the program. I graduated, and then you have the option, if you're a good influence on the other community there and the kind of the program supports the path that you're going, you have an option to go to sober living, where you just pay a weekly amount of rent. There's some stipulations there. There is some guidelines, but you're in a living environment that's conducive to your recovery and a better future. And that's where I chose to go, and that's whenever I'm grateful that we cross paths, you know?
Yeah. Now, three stages. You told me it's a nine month, typically it's a 9 month program. Told me it took you 12. Which one of those stages did it run longer?
The sober living is kind of what I count as the additional time, as the additional 3 months there, because that's part of the program too. It's definitely not a separate entity. It's still under the umbrella of that program. And because, to be frank, I was desperate. I didn't want to die. Didn't want to go back out to what I kept on doing, and kind of in a position to where it's like, if you have a better way and you've been where I want to go, then whatever you suggest to me, I'm going to do. And that was part of the suggestion that was given to me.
To stay there
longer.
Yeah, I can certainly see that after you go through the 9 months of recovery, you begin to own your shortcomings. And you see, wow, I've done a lot of things. That's kind of poke at your self-confidence.
Yeah, no,
and your desire to go out and be an independent person in the community again.
Definitely. I do struggle with my self-confidence and my self-image even to this day, but I know that it's something that I turn to God about now, and I turn to other people in my life now, that the program of recovery and that God has given me to kind of reassure me of my worth today. But it is definitely a living wound that is still there, that does have an impact on me.
You'll spend probably the rest of your life nurturing and healing that wound. But as you nurture it, the beautiful part is you don't do anything but become more confident, happier, and stronger. And I argue when it comes to that, everyone in society loves a strong person. They just do. They are attracted to you. They are looking for you for judgment and guidance because you have earned their respect. And one of the things that I think young people really want is respect. And I'm telling you, this is how you get it. Staying out of drugs and alcohol earns you a tremendous amount of respect, not only from your parents, your relatives, other relatives, friends of your parents, but also from your friends. They're like, man, that person has such a great life and they don't have to do all this. Maybe I should spend more time hanging with them. Because I'll never forget, I had a ton of fun with a group of kids. I was late in my career in high school, and they were real clean, real straight kids. I had a great time that night. I was like, man, I wish I'd met these. I was hanging out, and I knew it. I'd known all of them. I just never gone out with them for whatever reason. We had a great time that night. I mean, it was silly stuff. I probably ended up that night playing board games, but it was fun. And you drove home and you knew you were safe. The only person you had to worry about was the other driver on the road. Because the incidence of drinking and driving on the roads, it really starts about 11 o'clock. And then it just gets worse. The number of drunk drivers that are on the road that are out there. So you go from sober living, you run into me, fortunately, we get you a license, and now what's happened?
Well, after I got my license, a lot of doors and a lot of opportunity opened up for me, It really felt good. It felt good to be able to drive legally for the first time in a long time. I mean, I lost my license pretty young, 16 or 17.
When do you estimate you first got into it's illegal for you to drive?
Almost,
even after you had a license?
Yeah, almost when I was 17, I knew I wasn't driving legally. Either I was under the influence, or if I can recollect correctly, I lost my license really young. So
you were drinking, driving, drugging 16,
oh, yeah.
15, 16 years old.
Oh, yeah.
Tell everyone when it started.
My addiction started.
Go ahead. And when and how?
My
This
addiction.
to me is so sad.
My addiction started, I was, approximately 13 or 14, and I lived with my mom at the time, my mom and my stepfather, and he battled alcoholism extremely bad. I mean, he's just a very abusive person, but he's just spiritually sick, and so
of course, he doled out the physical abuse.
yes, yeah, and
And then the mental abuse that just goes along with the intoxication.
yes, and I remember I had a headache at the time, and I was telling my mom that my head hurt, and my stepbrother went to my mom and was like, "Hey, give him a Xanax," And I knew what it was at the time, but I didn't know the effect it would have on me.
Tell everyone what Xanax is.
Xanax is an anti-anxiety benzoid, but it is a narcotic medication prescribed by a doctor.
So it is a narcotic.
Yes. And my mom, had that for her anxiety amongst other prescription medications during that time period. And I remember she gave me one, I was like 13 or 14, and it made me feel like that's what I was missing. Of course, I was in a toxic environment, very abusive. But I took that, I was like, man, this is what I've been missing. And from that day on, I was taking, all of her medication, not just anti-anxiety meds, but Vicodin and just different drugs. I was taking that, and I took that consistently.
That she was getting from licensed doctors.
Yes. And I took that consistently for about a year. And then I started smoking marijuana after that, which her and my stepfather smoked. And I know my story's a little different. Most people start out with drinking or smoking marijuana first, but mine was pills first. And then I started smoking. And then there was always hard liquor around the house, and I started drinking too. And I maintained that for a long time, probably till I was 16-ish, 16 or 17.
That drugs, alcohol, just the whole
I kept
kit
doing
and caboodle.
those three mainly: prescription pills, marijuana, and alcohol. And then when I was 16, I got introduced to cocaine, and I started doing cocaine like a lot, on a pretty consistent basis.
Because guess what? It made you feel better.
Yeah, I dropped out of school. I found cocaine at an alternative school because I had gotten kicked out a lot. And then I wound up dropping out, working at Whataburger. I remember I would trade the food I'd cook at Whataburger to my Coke dealer for a little bit of Coke. And I did that for a long time. I told myself, I was like, I'll never do methamphetamine because I know that's one of my dad's main deals, my mom, her main deals. And during that time period, I was living with my father, and I remember I called my Coke dealer up, and he came by and he brought meth instead of cocaine, and it was like I didn't care. I just wanted to get high, and I did that, and it was a really dark downward spiral from there. It was kind of nothing was off the table. It was every...
So this is at 16 and 6 months, 16
Yes,
8 months.
Exactly. By the time I was 18, I was anything you had, I'm going to do it. I didn't intravenously use drugs till I was around 19, but by 19 that's how I used my drugs. There was no more smoking it.
What prompted that? Because I'm in awe of that. I get, okay, smoke it, okay, you inhale it. There's no pain, but for me, injections are extremely painful.
Yeah.
IV, you might as well just go shut my hand in the car door, which is pretty much what it was like the last time I got one. And but what pushed you, like, yeah, I'm going to stick a needle in my arm and say this is fun, and I'm amazed at that one.
I remember that day like it was yesterday. I was in a really bad motel room in Fort Worth off of Main and 28th.
Oh yeah.
And
North Side.
And yep. And me and my dad were living in this motel room, both in our addiction. And I remember the next day.
So your dad was an addict.
Oh yeah.
Your stepdad's an addict.
Yeah.
Your mom's an addict.
Yes. Yes.
Holy mackerel.
And I remember the next day we were going to be homeless. We didn't have enough money to get a room for another night. And there were people that lived in that motel room that sold dime bags of methamphetamine, and they all shot dope. And I was like, I'm going to go by there and tell them that that's how I use my drugs too, and get them to do it for me, because I was at a point I just wanted to die. I was like, this is how I'm going to live. This is how I'm going to die. And I just kind of accepted it.
There's no point of clarity at that time in your life?
Oh yeah, none. There was no hope for me. I really didn't think. I know that you mentioned something earlier in our discussion, and you said about having a fun time clean when you were younger, and I just kind of want to reaffirm that. But I thought that was not true. You know, I thought
That you couldn't.
Exactly. I thought there's no way I can live a life that has fun in it, being clean and sober. And I know now today that that's a lie, you know? And I know it's a lie today, but back then it really seemed true.
I always look at like the kids at Wet n Wild, those water parks. Those kids are just having the time
Yeah.
of their life, laughing as hard as you can laugh. So there it is, you know, and I think one of the things we need to get across to young people is that's it. That is fun. That is fun. John told me that he went to see a comedian recently, a guy I love, and when you see those people and those comedians and you're laughing, your ribs are hurting.
Yeah.
That's it, folks. That's sort of as good as it gets, along with the hugs and everything that happened, like at a Christmas or at a birthday party or something with friends and family. That's really the pinnacle, along with your other positive achievements that you attain in life. Maybe it's getting your first home. Maybe you are having to work to get your first car. That's a major, awesome achievement. And those are our pinnacles. Those are our really, really sweet spots in life. Plus the fun and silliness of, you know, I had a student when I was teaching in public school, and Bill unfortunately was from a pretty broken home. And so it was raining. It was raining real hard. And so to go from the cafeteria back to the classrooms, you had to go through this set of doors that went sort of outside, but it had a covered walkway. So Bill took his lunchbox, took it over, put it under the gutter, collected water, and then when his classmates would open the doors up, he'd throw water all over them before on their way back to class. When Bill got to my classroom, of course he was soaking wet. He'd had the time of his life. And I don't blame him. I mean, when he told me, I was like, yeah, Bill, I bet that was funny as can be. In reality, no one got hurt.
Yeah.
No one's live. You know, yuck, I had to wear wet clothes all day because Bill got me. But that's some fun times. Drugs and alcohol weren't there. They
Yeah.
weren't even near. Bill was in the 6th or 7th grade. That's how mischievous Bill was. So yeah. So you get to this awful time, and then you're 16, and you're at the motel.
Yeah, and then I went to that room. I remember they all shared the same
Needle.
The same needle. They kept it in a little cup of bleach.
Oh.
And I went up there and I told them that that's how I've done my drugs. I asked them to do it for me, and they did it. And I sat outside the motel room the whole night, couldn't go to sleep, just really having a lot of bad thoughts. And it's really strange to hear me say it because yes, it was miserable. But at the same time, it was addicting, you know, and it's I know it's strange to say it like that, but that's the evil of it, you know. It's kind of like, you know, I can't stop doing what I know is causing nothing but pain and misery, you know. And once I reached that point of using drugs in that fashion, it got really dark really fast, you know.
Well, the part I'm finding interesting is that you were willing to lie to these people to get a potential high that you had no familiarity with, but you just perceived it as being better than where you were.
Yeah.
And you're willing to lie to get there. Willing to lie to get someone to put a needle in your arm.
Yeah, better than I was. That is a profound sentence you just said. You are correct. I thought it was
quite a craving.
I thought it would be better. I'd rather be under the influence in that way than have to face reality and what I would have to face the next morning, you know, that I knew was coming.
Okay, picking all of our stuff up and hitting the streets.
Yeah.
Because the car's gone.
Yeah, no, car's gone. We had traded the truck like 4 days ago. Truck's gone. I remember the morning we had carrying all of our clothes, and you see a homeless person, you know, carrying clothes for walking a long time will wear you out, and you got to choose to just let your clothes go, you know. and people wouldn't give me water. You go to gas stations, you ask for water. If you're dressed like a presentable person, that's no big deal. But if you're, a homeless drug addict, people don't want to give you water. That's the type of destitution that it does bring.
Just being dirty, just showing up dirty, unshaven. Yeah, people, it's an arm's length. And the sooner you're gone, the happier they are. And that's what you become to most people around you, except other users. It's tragic. That's not right, John. In a variety of ways, that any person has to go through that. Because a lot of it clearly is you had no adult ever raise you. These were wounded, injured people that happen to have a child. In fact, you have a brother? Do you have another brother? Or?
I have a half brother and 2 half sisters. They went with their biological father when they were younger, and I was never really raised with them. They had a pretty normal, childhood, as normal as it could be, right? Even the most perfect family has its flaws.
Right.
But I'm actually marrying my sister in March, so they asked me to marry him, and so.
As a pastor.
Yeah, and so God has, man.
So you'll be the pastor for your sister's wedding.
I will be officiating the wedding that I really was not raised with, and so it's just them seeing my wife. Oh yeah. It's
what an honor to go from where you were
to
now. They want you to officiate one of the most, for a lot of people, the most special day in their whole life. What an honor, John. Wow. Congratulations to you.